That's a great thing about lives, isn't it? You sit backstage chatting and then realize, oh, we better join in and talk to some people. Waiting for this to come through, but let's just dive in. Welcome, everyone. It feels like ages since we've done an update. I don't know if it feels the same for you, but it is the end of October, Halloween, 31st of October, and time for us to do another round of social media updates. If you haven't met us before, because I know sometimes we have some new people as well as some regulars who watch this session. My name is Luan. I'm a social media marketing consultant. I've worked agency side, client side, run my own consultancy and training business, working across lots of different sectors from B2B to education and not-for-profit as well.
Basically, I've done it all. So I'm Andy. If we've not yet met, I am a resident social media nerd, just like Luan, and background all in startups. Built a social media management software company 8 years ago. Grew it to becoming the fastest growing in the world, or in the market rather, and then sold it to Adobe, which is where I now work and build products here, which is quite fun. So with that, anything else you want to add before we dive straight in?
I think just our usual caveat as a reminder that Andy and I do this for fun, and because, you know, we immerse ourselves, we read news and data every day, and we know you're all really busy, so we try and wrap everything that we're doing and learning and reading in a month into 1 hour to help keep you in the know, be a better social media marketer. Our caveat is there is a lot in here. We're not trying to overwhelm you or tell you that you need to do everything. Take what you need. Usual answers as well. Yes, it's being recorded. You can watch it back. I think many people will be watching the recording because this is also half term when we're doing this live, and we will share a link at the end so that you can see the slides and get a copy as well. I think what we should say, Andy, before we dive into today is that we are less than a week away from seeing many of you face to face in a big room in London. And I don't think either of us could be any more excited about the agenda that we've put together, the people that have already registered, getting this happening, a real focus on B2B social. So if you have registered, let us know in the chat if we'll see you face to face next week. If you haven't registered yet, the tickets will officially close at 5 p.m. tomorrow, the 1st of November, but tickets are still available, and I will pop the link in the chat. It's B2B Social Media Day in London all day. Presentations, fireside chats, panel discussions, ping pong. The only thing I haven't prepped for yet, Andy, is ping pong. So
you any good?
I don't know, but there is a table in our local park. So if I get time, that will be my last thing on my list of, do I know how to do this?
Get some practice in. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait.
Yes.
Cannot wait. The only thing I'm going to share as well, and I don't usually talk about product stuff here, because usually we go straight into data, which I will in just a second. But a couple of updates, which I think is actually quite useful. So we've been busy building all of the social media planning capabilities like content calendar, etc., into Adobe Express. And we've just now added the ability for you to share that with a team. So if you are working with clients, or if you work in a team and you need others to see and view and comment on the content that you've created, now you can do that. But the reason I'm bringing it up, because it's the only tool that you can do this entirely free. So just as Luan and I were about to go live, we're talking about how all software companies are putting prices up left, right, and center. It's really nice to be able to do something entirely for free. So that's a nice positive bit of news. Anyway, data and trends, let's dive in. And we're going to go some data trends first, and then we'll go network by network, looking at all of the updates you need to know. There's no things that are in test. These are all material things that you can use and utilize. But of course, pick some of these you might want to explore, pick none of these, entirely up to you. But at least over the course of the next 45 minutes, you'll be fully informed with all the things that you genuinely need to know in the world of social.
Cool. I didn't click the button to put the slides on screen, so can you press it again and then I'll...
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that was me.
All right, all good. Well, obviously now we're getting our new tools, so let's go ahead and share screen. Did you get the button?
There we go.
Beautiful. All right, cool. Nice. Data and trends. So let's start with our favorite report. So thank you for letting me know earlier this week, Luan, that this report had dropped. So this is hot off the press, this. So this is our I think probably our favorite report that we see every quarter from Data Reportal. Overall social media usage over time continues to grow. No surprise, 40% of the world's population now actively using social media every single month, just over 5 billion people. That 5 billion breaks down across these platforms. The data has changed actually a little bit for this month. And you'll notice on the left-hand side for kind of fellow data nerds, that there's a split between those that are monthly active users, MAU, and advertising audiences. So the addressable audience that you could advertise to. Because naturally there's a little bit of like estimation that happens in this data, but it's quite useful just to give us a kind of rough guide as to where the growth is happening on social, what are the platforms that are the biggest right now. I call out YouTube fairly often because that number continues to grow. Of course, Facebook is still absolutely massive. There's some really interesting Facebook data we're going to share later on, which surprised me actually in terms of engagement rates that's happening on Facebook. We'll dive into that later. That did surprise me. TikTok's growth has kind of tailed off from like a overall perspective. Of course, still absolutely massive, and you'll see where TikTok is strongest is in other dimensions, which we'll cover later on. Probably no massive surprises. I don't know, Luan, do you have anything you want to call out or any narrative to this slide?
I think there's a couple of things to call out, which we always call out, is that anyone that's staring at their screens closely now, you will not see LinkedIn on this because LinkedIn report their data differently as part of Microsoft. If they were on here, they'd be in the kind of lower third of here. What is really useful, and I noted that it's not on this slide yet because of the numbers, but Threads data has started to appear in this report as well. What I love about Data Reportal, well, there's a couple of things. It's taken straight from source and really credible sources in terms of the data. It's updated quarterly. There might not always be big differences, but I don't know if you've had time to do this, Andy. I like to open the quarter before and see what the small shifts are as well. And there is a few small shifts this time. So I've got a Post-it note with a couple of them to come up later.
Nice. Awesome.
See
Love
if
it.
you spotted them.
No, I think this general order is still fairly consistent. And what I thought was very interesting is that they also, for the first time, shared the ad audiences for total reported. And this is where LinkedIn appears here, which is fascinating to me. So this is the addressable audience that are there to be advertised to. You'll see discrepancies because some are not opted in and some are not of the age that are able to be advertised to. Hence, you'll see big shifts. Again, this is what really demonstrates how strong YouTube is in the overall reach. And obviously, as a result, from ads. And then LinkedIn is incredibly strong here too. Now, I find that slightly curious, that data, and that is self-reported from LinkedIn because they say they have over 1 billion members, monthly active users. Not as big as that, but without getting into the weeds here, it just gives you a sense as to how big LinkedIn actually is. So I don't know if you've got anything else you want to add on that one, Luan.
I'm just going to do a pitch. We're going to be talking about B2B social media advertising next week. So LinkedIn is one of those strange ones, isn't it? Like, it's often reported that it's expensive to advertise on there. And yes, it might be in terms of cost per click or however you measure it, but it's so highly targeted. And some of the new advertising options for LinkedIn around thought leadership ads, newsletter promotion. They've announced today lead generation as an objective for boosted posts. They are really focusing on here. So for those B2B people, it is worth a look. We've got a quick question already. Is TikTok growing? Yes, it is all still growing. Maybe not as fast as it once was, but yeah, they are all still growing. Apart from potentially X, which we'll come on to later in the deck.
Exactly. And it's always going to be the case when like TikTok are the second fastest ever company to hit 100 million monthly active users. So of course that stratospheric rate of growth was never going to continue. All growth charts taper off eventually. But yeah, TikTok's still incredibly strong, just not growing at the rate that it was, which is expected. Number of social platforms used, it's gone from 6.7 to 6.8. So there you go. Slight increase here. Ultimately, your audience are across multiple channels. This is exactly the same narrative that I have every time we talk about this particular data. The key message here is that if you go onto the left-hand side, look at the users that are unique to platform, you'll notice that it is well under sub 1%. So your audience are typically across multiple platforms. And they always use as an example, like if Insta is where your focus is, totally fine. But of course, we're always fighting across every platform. We're fighting diminishing reach. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. I'm going to talk about Insta reach in just a sec. But like, take Instagram, we know that reach is declining. A best way to offset that is by looking and thinking multi-channel. And of course, this gives us some good guidance as to what other channels might work quite well for our business. Of course, even better than this is to be guided by your users, so you understand your audience and what platform preferences they have. But this can provide some real good guidance. So yeah, if you're focusing on Insta, 77% are on YouTube, over 50% of them are on TikTok. So it gives you an idea of like what other platforms you want to bring into the mix. That's my take here, but what do you reckon, Luan?
I went down a real rabbit hole on this one, because for those looking at this, the bottom line, like you said, most social media platforms has got like 0.1, 0.2% of unique users. The bottom line of this chart is a platform called Line, which is 4.5%, which is significantly higher than all of the others is unique to platforms. So I then went down a Google route and found a brilliant article. I'll share it in the chat in a minute about Line. So Line is a Japanese app. So for those of you, this may be completely irrelevant, but I know some of you are doing international work and maybe international recruitment as well for the higher education sector. I looked into Line, and it's like a messaging app and ad platform all in one. And it has all the features that the local audience love in terms of interactivity and stickers and things like that. So I know that Andy and I we tend to stick to the main big platforms when we do this update: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. But don't dismiss these overall smaller platforms if they are relevant for your audience. So we do sometimes talk a bit about Reddit, Line, if it's in Japan, some of these other ones. So in your mix, your multi-channel mix, maybe I'll set you a challenge for 2025. Go and find something a bit smaller and niche to start experimenting with.
I like that take. Yeah. Cool. Social media share of online time. No surprises here about the demographic differences in this. Again, you'll see that the amount of time that social media dominates as far as the amount of time we all spend online, probably slightly depressing if you look at it in a certain way, but good for business though, because when people are spending, in the best case, nearly 40% of their time on social media, that clearly represents the incredible opportunity that we all have through social media. We all know this, hence we're on this call. No surprises in terms of demographic differences. And clearly there's some gender bias towards female users spending a bit more time on social as well, which is a good thing to think about depending on your audience that you're trying to target. But the bit that I find particularly interesting is looking at how that time spent breaks down per platform. And this is what I mentioned earlier when we were talking about like overall growth of TikTok has slowed. The bit that TikTok has absolutely nailed is audience retention. People spend more time on TikTok than any other platform, as you can see, given this. Which, this, just to caveat this is represented just by Android app usage. So, there's a bit of extrapolation here going on because we can't see this data across every single device type and surface, etc. But this gives us some directional guidance as to what platforms are engaging users the best. And typically, if people are spending more time on the platform, I say this same narrative every time, so sorry, I'm boring. But the important point is, if people are spending more time on the platform, there's more opportunity for our content to be seen. Therefore, we'll typically see higher engagement rates on the platforms that have higher audience retention. But again, be driven by your audience, but this data can be very useful. And again, just to your point, Luan, talking about Line, you see that index is pretty high as well. Very much in the fact that that is like Japan's favorite social network behind X, and I expect it probably very quickly will be the one.
I think there's something to take into account here that, again, as a caveat, this data that we're showing you is a global overview. So it's not country specific, it's not B2B or B2C or sector specific at all. But what this is making me think about is We don't use all social media platforms in the same way. That is why we use an average of 6.8 now different social media platforms. And TikTok is one of those platforms which data supports this of it's used for entertainment. Not every TikTok user is actively posting content on the platform. It's one of those where there's a lot more consumption of content going on. And the other fun fact, and this is because I did a quiz last week, so if there's any quiz participants on here, you'll know this, hopefully. 23% of TikTok users open search within 30 seconds of accessing the app. So they are going on there for search, hence why they might be spending more time on there versus a platform like Facebook, where maybe you're just popping into a group or seeing what your friends have posted, versus LinkedIn, which you and I spend a lot of time on. We go on there, we post, we stay up to date with industry news. It feels more obvious then that time is shorter on those platforms versus the search and entertainment focused ones.
Definitely. But I think like the point of search, there's such an important point. I love that stat. So thank you for sharing it.
Have that?
that was a surprise for me today. So but that kind of represents what we've been talking about for a while, which is TikTok is becoming a much more intent driven platform. And that naturally, yes, entertainment is a part of it, but typically we're searching because we want to find something. So it's becoming much more intent driven, and especially for younger audiences, which represents a fantastic opportunity for us as businesses. And there's actually some interesting things that TikTok are doing that we'll cover later on under the TikTok updates that will point to this. Now, let's talk about some brand research. Overall, if you looked across this globally, more people are spending time on social media and using social media for the purposes of brand research. Now, as social media folk that do business stuff on social media, this is good. This is very good. But you'll also see, again, demographic splits between, what typical persona will be spending time on social media to research brands. But overall, you'll see some very encouraging statistics. So if you ever want to just screenshot this slide and share this with a client, if you're kind of pitching services or whatever, I think this is quite compelling reasoning for this. But the thing, again, if we kind of double click into that, that's more interesting is where are people, or what platforms are people using to research brands the most? So social networks covers 46%. So by far and away, that is the leading light. People are naturally researching products and going directly to social media. Maybe it's a search on TikTok, or maybe they're asking their communities on Instagram. Social networks still absolutely reign supreme. But very interestingly, and I noticed this has shifted quite a lot over the years that we've been doing this, it's question and answer sites. And in that category, Reddit also sits. And I think this has been fascinating to watch, particularly as it relates to Reddit. If you do any Google search now, of course, underneath their kind of AI overview, the first things you're going to see in pretty much every single Google search are not branded results, not like people who've tried to hack SEO, etc. It's going to be Reddit threads. If you're ever looking for like how to do X or how to do Y, it's going to be Reddit. And that's as a result of their deal with Google. And it has, oh my word, has it jettisoned like Reddit's results into orbit. First time they've ever hit profitability, record user numbers, left, right, and center. So Reddit's become incredibly important. And it's very interesting because if you think about the amount of time that businesses prioritize their own blogs and their own blog content over their non-owned surfaces, whether it's Quora or Reddit, that represents such an interesting opportunity for brands. So I'm going to pause here because I get very excited about this as an opportunity. But what do you reckon, Luan?
Again, I think this is about how we use different platforms, and it's absolutely fine to use some platforms for research and insights and other platforms for posting and engaging with your audiences. Social media is such a big term. There is so many different platforms now. We have to pick the ones that are right for us. So absolutely, I use these platforms for search and ideas and what's happening. I'm not necessarily actively posting on them. I'm a lurker, and that's fine. I will take those insights and use it in my day-to-day work, my proposals, and the content that I post on those audiences. And Lizzie's just put in the chat, Reddit is great for social listening.
Yeah, I love that. And Further to that, just as a real life example, at Adobe, we have a bunch of ambassadors that are non-paid, like just users of our product, but are ambassadors. They are like our army on Reddit and Quora and Discord that are responding to questions about design or brand questions or anything like that. So it's very much a reactive response driven platform, but ultimately very high intent searches and a great opportunity to convert that latent demand if you can kind of mobilize some troops to do it. A solo social media person could not cover that amount of ground. So, thinking about your operating model across it could be a smart move. Brand research by social platform, how does that break down? Of course, I think this is very important to consider. To your point, Luan, this is global data, not segmented in any way. So naturally, this would look very different depending on industry. But it gives us an idea of at an overall macro level, what platforms are people using to research brands the most? The bit that I am surprised that doesn't exist here is YouTube. Like, I would think that would rank incredibly highly personally, but looking with the data that we've got, clearly, Insta, if you looked at B2C, clearly Insta's incredibly strong, as is TikTok, search driven, yada, yada. Reddit ranks here, LinkedIn here. Doesn't mean that, LinkedIn isn't powerful. You look at it across a different industry, this would be switched on its head, clearly. That's my take on this, Luan, but you always got an interesting
your point on YouTube, maybe the search on YouTube is more how to do something versus the brand name.
Could be.
Bit like a search engine, the intent question is slightly different on YouTube as part of Google versus on social media platform. It's perhaps a bit more directed.
Yeah, you might be right on that.
Who knows? We'll find it.
Yeah. Right.
This is interesting.
It is, isn't it? So this report from Buffer was great, actually, because they certainly put together a decent amount of statistical significance in this data. If anyone else saw it, and sorry if I'm repeating if you've seen it already. So, of course, engagement rates have declined over time. We know this. That's just, unfortunately, the way of life. However, choosing our formats of our posts wisely can help us offset this engagement decline. Clearly, that's why Luan and I have been advocating for short form video for a little while, because you'll notice that it's been really strong, big spike in mid 22. But you notice that, of course, everything's declining, but carousels at the beginning of 2024, end of 23, overtook Reels for engagement. Now, there's a bunch of hypotheses for this, because, naturally swiping through, counts as some form of interaction. And of course, as we all know, carousels get like a second bite of the cherry, if you will, in the feed, because typically the second slide is then shown. So very interesting to see. So it's not all about Reels. Reels still important, but it's nice to think that our other content formats can work. Luan, what do you reckon?
I think your point there about carousels give you a second opportunity. I think it's increasingly important to think about this when you're creating content now, is that not everyone will always see the first image on a carousel. When they go back in and scroll through their feed, they may see the second one or the third one. So in terms of designing your content, you need to almost think a bit like every page on your website is a landing page. You can't assume people are watching them in the carousel order, and I'm seeing that more and more.
Yeah, that's a really smart piece of advice, actually, Luan. I like that. Cool. It's like you're good at this stuff, Luan. So
I read this stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, if you look at reach, Reels still win for reach. Look at that ridiculous spike. So clearly, that's when they started pushing it really hard. And of course, it's declining, but still way ahead. So ignore these. That's where just there isn't enough data there, but it's still Reels are still a hugely important part of the mix to drive reach. But the right strategy for Instagram, like with most things in life, in marketing, is a good balance of yes, we want to reach more people. That's where Reels are good. But of course, we want to get some depth of engagement. That's where carousels and stories perform particularly well. So, mixing those three, reach and engagement content, that's where the magic is.
Right, just go back, because I got I know it's coming up as a feature change, but data like this is the insights that drive what's happening in terms of what we should be doing and what changes the platforms are making. So we'll see in a minute, and we'll skip over it then. But now, if you're noticing, if you're uploading kind of carousels and with music, they're saying, do you want to turn this into a reel as well? So we're starting to see these kind of content formats merging and being able to be shown in different places. So Instagram are obviously taking this, reels are getting the reach. How can we encourage other content that people are posting into this format?
Yeah, I love that. We'll talk about that some more, because I think that's it's really interesting, that opportunity. YouTube Shorts, I've been pretty bullish on YouTube Shorts for a while now, and there's a couple of shifts that have really forced this into YouTube Shorts' favor. We're going to touch on them later on, so I won't talk about them now. But ultimately, big increase in overall view count. It's actually beating some on demand. So on demand is basically YouTube long form, regular YouTube. So look at that. YouTube Shorts video views have increased by 153%. So that's really, really quite encouraging. Shorts drive higher engagement compared to on demand. I'm surprised about that, because it's more snackable content, which is fascinating. And the bit that's also really interesting, higher viewer retention compared to TikTok. And we've already seen, like, TikTok's user retention is not something that they struggle with, right? But as you would have seen in that data when we're looking at time spent, the platform that is directly beneath TikTok is YouTube. So, YouTube Shorts does represent a really interesting opportunity for brands right now. But overall engagement, TikTok still reigns supreme. This data is from that previous report, from the previous slide, from Dash Hudson. Best platform for engagement. We know this. Instagram's algorithm is just smarter than the rest of them. It's better placed to serve the most relevant content. So it's still driving the highest form of engagement. So, that's been pretty consistent for the last few years, actually. As we ignore, don't you hate it when you have a typo in a slide and you can't change it live? Can you please ignore that? Anyway, TikTok remains the platform of choice for teens as well. So, and I think that really charts the performance and the future potential of TikTok. Going back to that question that we had earlier, like, is it growing? Is it not? The fact that these kinds of platforms are still the choice of teens naturally means that platform continues to have a really good foundation to grow on for many years to come. X. So no surprise to see a chart like this related to X. And I'm fascinated by this. I won't have any kind of conjecture over this. Curious to know in the chat, though, what our kind of fellow social media peeps are doing. Is it, are you coming off X? Do you spend any time there? Be really interested to know what others are doing. Luan, I know you spend more time on X than I do. So
I've shifted I'm more of a lurker on X now than I am a poster. I still do think it is a real-time focus group. It's the place to listen if you want to know what's going on in the world, whether that's, what people think of the dances on Strictly to general elections, budget news. X is still the place to go. And for me, yes, the numbers are dropping, and we know that, but it's not all about numbers and size that matters. If it turns into a platform which is about news and focus groups, I'm okay with that. It's about finding which platforms you're using for which reasons, and whether you're going to listen, engage, post on there. I would say X is worth hanging around for.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate your take on this. Slightly different to mine, which is good. There's no right answer to this. You do you.
Yeah.
And probably the least surprising news of all time, 1 in 4 Gen Z adults follow more than 50 influencers. So the impact of influencers will only continue to grow when you look at how much of a significant role that they play in the younger audience's consumption of social media. I don't think that's a huge surprise, but clearly this is still, even though we've been talking about it for years, it's still pretty nascent in working with influencers across both B2C and particularly B2B. There's so much opportunity here. But yeah, we're not really capturing the opportunity correctly as it stands today. And I posted about this recently, but yeah, Blue Sky continues to grow. Overall user numbers 13 million, so like orders of magnitude fewer than others. But as you said, Luan, it's not all about numbers. They are continuing to grow. I don't quite get it yet. The platform personally, I'm not the right person to ask as to, is it good or not. But like we had a question, a very interesting question on this yesterday, didn't we, Luan? And yeah, I'm fascinated to understand what audience types and personas are spending time there, to then figure out is this a good place to be. I'm a kind of like watch, wait and see mode on this one.
Same. I'm not playing on more platforms at the moment, but I did have an interesting chat with Nicole from Baton Hall. I don't know if you're on this chat. We were messaging about this a couple of weeks ago and prepping for our Future of Social panel next week. Plug. What is interesting to me is that when this news comes out, it's like what happened in the last day. Elon Musk did a big block, or unblock feature on X. So this exodus, this move seems to always happen and be talked about when something big has happened on X. What I find fascinating is people are talking about leaving X for another platform versus spending more time on the other platforms you've already got an account on. So do we need something to replace X, or should we just spend more time on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram where potentially we're already there? Fascinated by this need to add something new.
Yeah, exactly.
Given those stats that we said about overlaps and that you've already got your audiences somewhere.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a good call out. Let's see. Right then, Luan, that's enough of me whittling on. So
features.
Over to you.
So again, going back to Data Reporter, we just want to highlight that if you need any data because you're doing internal presentations or business cases, we recommend datareporter.com. What I love about the Instagram, and this is something, again, we have talked about, we can't just talk about Instagram as one app, one platform anymore, because the feed, stories, and reels behave so differently. The content plan potentially needs to be different on there as well. And Data Reporter is giving us insights, benchmarks around the different parts of the platform. So if you need some benchmark data, there it is. They're also getting more helpful in the app when you're doing things. And again, this indicates that they are pushing reels, because there's best practice. When you open the app, there's like, oh, would you like some advice? Or when you post a reel, there's some advice in there as well. So use that. I do think Instagram are getting a lot better at helping their users know what's working, what's not working, and what direction they're heading in. Like this example. So I think some of us, if we're following Adam Missouri, your heart might sink every week where he's going, oh, this works, this isn't working. And it's always in the evening because of his time zone. But he is dispelling myths. And those of us working in social media are talking about it like this. I spend my life dispelling myths or presenting arguments for pros and cons of things. This one was about, do third-party tools impact your reach on Instagram? He has said no, but take off the TikTok watermark. We knew that.
Yeah, exactly. And there was also an extra clarification video that he shared after this, is that if you include your brand logo in the video, that's totally cool. So which is what we would hope to see. Yeah. So yeah.
WhatsApp stickers for stories. We love stickers in stories. This is interesting, driving people from stories to WhatsApp. So this whole driving people for one-to-one engagement versus in the comments and integrating WhatsApp, I think is another interesting direction for them to be going in. Profile QR codes. This is a bit what you can do on LinkedIn. You can open the app, find a QR code, show it to your mate that you're standing next to help you follow each other. And this is the one we talked about earlier that I think is interesting and pushing. Carousels with audio will now appear in the Reels feed. So audio, I think, on social media is interesting. We know that it helps with trends. We also know that you should kind of delight with sound, be okay with sound off as well. But they are talking that if you're putting audio on there, you can switch it to go in the Reels feed. So an interesting one to test, I think. as I said, more tips and guidance. So as you're posting in the stream, you probably can't read it, but in red, it's kind of giving you ideas of what you could be doing or how well your reel is performing, which, you know, gives us that dopamine hit, doesn't it, to keep producing them.
Exactly. I think that the extra level of detail here I find particularly useful, because I'm sorry, these screenshots are so awful. That's my fault. But like what it says here is like, your views were longer than 25% of other videos. Your strong hook helped people retain within the first 3 seconds. And I was like, that's actually genuinely very helpful.
Yeah.
Because now we don't have to form our own hypothesis of like, okay, that did well, but was it because X, Y, or Z? You know, whilst yes, we'll still need our own intuition around this, but having some very practical guidance, basically like having a social strategist on your side. So pretty helpful.
What have we got from Facebook? Again, back to data report or some engagement rates. This is where you are breaking down your total engagements. I think this is done by impressions, possibly, rather than followers. Have a look at the small print in terms of how it's calculated. Some people calculate it one way, some the other. I would say be consistent and use your reasoning for which, however you're doing your calculation. But again, it is showing different engagement rates by content type, whether that's reels, photos, or videos.
Just on that point, actually, I don't want to segue it too much, but when you look at engagement rates, do you look at engagement rates as you know, engagements against overall follower numbers or engagements against post reach?
I personally use followers, and that's because when I am doing engagement rate calculations, it's usually as part of an audit against competitors, and I can get follower numbers for competitors using a variety of tools. It's a lot harder to get impressions or reach data for competitors. So I personally go for followers. I know that's a challenge in terms of, you know, follower numbers, are they fake? Sometimes I will look at the audience on a platform. So for example, Facebook, your page, if I then look at audience insights, and say, for example, I know that your objectives are UK only, and you might have 70% non-UK, I would calculate my engagement rate by the relevant audience followers as well. So I go for followers because I'm doing it more from a competitive landscape versus own content performance.
Got it. And this is good. This is why we represent other ends of the spectrum.
Because you would do the other way.
I do it exactly. Yeah, do it the other way. And I love your kind of rationale of like competitor benchmarking. Makes a ton of sense. My own personal take is as a result of post reach, because if people didn't have a chance to see it, then how could we evaluate whether our content resonated? So I'm looking at it purely from like our owned content perspective. Did this perform well? So that's typically my rationale. I don't think there's any right or wrong in that way, but the thing we can't control typically is how much reach our post gets, but we can control the quality of our content. So, you know, I'm just trying to think about what are the things that we can control and how do we evaluate if someone actually saw the post, did they take an action? So, but I think probably a mix, like in most things, probably a mix of both methodologies works well. But the thing I wanted to just call out very quickly is that Reels engagement rates are incredibly strong. I'm like, that seems too high to me. But yeah, if anyone is still spending time on Facebook and using Reels as a way to grow their brand, I'd love to hear from you and whether you're seeing that level of engagement on Reels, because that seems very, very strong. Anyway, back to you.
This is a news story that I'm fascinated by and interesting, and I hope it works, is that Facebook have announced that they are redesigning the app to attract Gen Z users. So they are acknowledging that not all Gen Z are using Facebook. I would disagree. I think some of them are, but perhaps not as much as other social media platforms. So they are moving things around. And one of those is about having a local tab, which is moving things like Marketplace, which is selling things locally, and groups to highlight, you know, local activity as well. So very community driven is the route that Facebook is going, because we also do know that one of the biggest reasons for people to return to the app and engage in the app is groups. So I'm liking this local tab and focus on communities. Custom thumbnails to Reels, a small thing, but, you know, is really important for some of us that like to make sure that we can have that custom thumbnail on our content, a nice feature. Collabs. We talk about collabs a lot. We've been doing it for 4 years. How valuable it is to engage with other people, to expand your reach, expand your audience, cross-promote, etc. All those lovely collab features that have been on Instagram for so long are now available on Facebook. LinkedIn have done some stuff as well. They come in batches, don't they? We said earlier that in Data Reportal, you don't very often find LinkedIn in terms of monthly active users. They have started to share their EU member statistics. You won't be able to read it here, but this is a breakdown by countries. And what they are breaking it down by is logged in users and logged out users as well, because you don't always need to be logged in to view content on LinkedIn. So if you are operating in different countries, you've got some data there if you need it. Dwell time. Actually, we know this from the Data Reportal stuff and our own experiences. You know, the platforms want us to stay on the platforms. It's becoming an important ranking factor for LinkedIn. What I would say on LinkedIn is that their engineering team on their own personal accounts, which is another indicator, is where they are sharing the projects that they're working on and when it goes live. So insights from LinkedIn and changes aren't always coming out directly from LinkedIn on company pages and announcements. They are coming directly from the engineers. So when you see things like this, go and follow those engineers, because they talk about the projects and the background and what they're doing. And so this is just, this is the latest one about dwell time.
People spending more time on your content is the thing that's going to drive success. So I love that. Seems like they're emphasizing it even more. Yeah.
Also pushing their video feed. You may have this now. I've got it now along the bottom of my mobile app. I know Lucy talked about this on a marketing meetup webinar around, you know, we like it, but Lucy was really emphasizing you can't search on there. It's a bit like a For You feed. It's quite random at the moment, but they are pushing video. And Andy, you're posting more video than anyone I know on LinkedIn. What are you seeing?
Definitely increased views, definitely. And a lot more third degree connection, people that don't follow me interacting with the content, which does mean that some of the comments are less relevant, if I'm honest, because it's just getting served to anyone. So that shows to me that, to your point, it's not hugely targeted, but reach on video is definitely increasing. So I think, LinkedIn sometimes are a bit shonky with some of the things that they roll out. But I'm hoping this works better than stories and actually lasts. But video and LinkedIn, I think, it's a strategic imperative. I think if LinkedIn is going to be a focus for anyone on this call. Yeah.
LinkedIn Live events continue to perform well. We've been doing these on LinkedIn Live all year. I do a load of LinkedIn Lives. It is performing well. We love it in terms of being able to send out invites to you, get you to watch it, see it afterwards, the comments. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn Live, and it's great to kind of see that they are pushing this. It's no longer just a feature of creator mode. There is still some criteria to access LinkedIn Live. You need to use a third-party tool to do it, but I love this feature. This one for me, I was going to mention to you, discover how people found you on LinkedIn. So when you're looking at who's viewed your profile on LinkedIn, which is a premium feature to see all of it, I've had this for quite a long time about seeing how people found me, whether it was through search or through the feed. I don't know if this is relatively new for you.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it before. So
maybe it's a premium thing versus rolling out to free.
Yeah, I'm too tight to pay for premium, so maybe that's a difference.
I'm just going to answer a question because it's just come up. Jenny has just put in the chat, do you use StreamYard? The answer was, in all of our previous ones, we have used StreamYard. Today we are using Restream, and that is as a test, but also because StreamYard have put up their costs significantly, and there is a huge difference between StreamYard and Restream in terms of pricing. Look to be both the same experience from our side, so we'll see what happens afterwards, and any feedback from you watching would be useful.
My personal first experience of it has been very good, actually. Very easy to stream on my own LinkedIn at the same time and my YouTube, so quite good. Anyway, ended up into an unplanned ad for Restream there, but cool. TikTok engagement rates incredibly strong. They're still the strongest across all platforms, but some of this data here, that's why I was so shocked with the Facebook engagement rate data, why that was higher. So yeah, that's something I'm going to be investigating more anyway. But yeah, as we know, TikTok engagement rate's very strong. Back to Luan's point earlier about the prevalence of search within TikTok. What was that, 23 or 24% of people?
23.
Yeah, 23% of people open search in the first 30 seconds. TikTok realized this and they're capitalizing on it. And essentially they're going after Google with this. So now businesses, or very soon businesses, will be able to buy ads, keyword search times, works exactly like Google AdWords, keywords, etc. So you can bid on the terms that are most important for you, which really does show how TikTok is evolving beyond just a social discovery platform to becoming more intent driven. Talking of intent, we can also look at view trending searches as well. So this is a great opportunity. It's kind of like Google Trends, if you will, a great way of us understanding the things that are working. Me personally, I don't spend a lot of time looking at trends, etc. But for other brands, like especially in the fashion industry, those trends move fast. So looking at those style trends can be very strategically advantageous for you. I thought this was really cool, actually. Flip stories, and I love TikTok have such a creative way of thinking about audience interaction. So this is how it started, how it's going, rather than an Instagram approach would be like tapping through to the next slide, if you will, in the story. Here we can kind of toggle this little slider, which kind of flips it round. Really nice interaction. So maybe you'll think of creative ways that you can potentially utilize that too. We can now mention in TikTok stories, so what I'm seeing from these updates, clearly that TikTok are leaning a bit further into the story format too. Works exactly like how you know and be very familiar with stories on Insta. Works exactly the same. Cool. We're making good time. So let's dive into the rest of them. Threads status indicator, really there to try and drive more interaction, make it more real time. Threads still have a lot of work to do in terms of driving that audience retention. From the last time I was looking at data, typical user would spend about 6 minutes on Threads, which is a whole host lower than other platforms. So they're trying to find ways to stimulate that real-time kind of community vibe and an interaction. We can create a thread from an Instagram comment. Basically, Insta have gone across their product and gone how can we shoehorn threads into this experience at every given opportunity? Yeah. So now if we want to go ahead and, there's someone's commented something that was interesting on one of our posts on Insta, we could long press on it and then we could create a thread out of it. So sometimes quite a nice way of that user generated content coming to the fore. So there's cool ways that we could use it. Obviously I'm still slightly cynical about how Threads is shoehorned in here, but I think there's some interesting ways to use it. This is the only thing that we're covering today that is a TBA type of thing, but I thought it was interesting enough that it's worthwhile surfacing. Threads are creating this loops feature, which the naming is quite cool actually, but loops allow you to connect a thread and multiple people around a thread around a certain topic. So it's kind of like, Facebook
community.
Community. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's certainly some interest there, especially as social continues to shift into more fragmented private communities, etc. So there's some interest there for sure. Location tag on Threads. I don't need to explain that one to the pros on this call. You get it. But again, more features coming to Threads to kind of make it into a more well-rounded platform. Now, I didn't touch on this earlier, but this is a key factor as to why YouTube Shorts is gaining a huge amount of momentum right now, is that videos under 3 minutes long, or 3 minutes long and under, is now going to be a short. So that means that we used to only be limited to 60 seconds to create a short. Now we've got more creative freedom because we can work with up to 3 minutes, which is the same on TikTok for a lot of people, same on Instagram for a lot of people. So now we've got we don't have to create different content for shorts if we don't need to, because we've got the same amount of flexibility. But the really important thing here is that for any video that anyone uploads that's 3 minutes and under, it will become a short. not like regular YouTube, for want of a better description, which really shows YouTube's commitment to the format and why, you know, this is going to be a format that's going to be pushed hard.
I think that's quite interesting, because I just think, you know, I've got some historical YouTube videos which are really kind of quite short how-to screen share stuff, and they're not 3 minutes, and yet that wouldn't be something that I would see as a short. So you might need to be thinking about the purpose of your video, and if it needs to be a usual YouTube video, to make it a bit longer.
Yeah, or go for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And now we can also remix shorts with these templates. So if we ever come across a short that we're like, actually, that's really cool, you can use it as a template, which gives you an opportunity to remix it in your own style, do your own take on it. Again, YouTube are just trying to figure out ways that we can take content that already exists, but put our own spin on it, which again lowers the barrier to creating content and us being creative. And more stuff related to shorts, so you can see where all the momentum is going. We can now add polls to shorts to get some deeper audience interaction. And shocker, there we go. We've made this with like 9 minutes to go, so that is a winner. Do you want to try and
summarize that?
Yeah.
I love the fact it's unrehearsed, but we always manage to do it on time and in time. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube are the platforms that are driving growth and brand discovery. So video as a format, but also that word discovery is really important. YouTube Shorts, increasingly good opportunity for brands. This, I'm just going to add in here, I think this is quite a challenge, because I do know in some organizations, institutions, larger team sizes, that sometimes YouTube video content sits separately from shorts and kind of TikTok. So is this format going to add on to a social media manager's job description? I think it might be going forward. Back to Instagram and those different formats, your different results. We can't just go, oh, this is Instagram. We've got to be thinking about the different elements, carousel stories and reels. And there was a brilliant blog on Instagram, their newsroom, probably 18 months ago now, about how each of those areas of the platform works slightly differently. So we've got to consider them as separate areas. And then the other platforms, Blue Sky keeps growing. We're going to see research across the different platforms. So don't forget about Quora, Reddit, to do your research. And on those platforms, engage your teams, engage your ambassadors. You don't need to do everything yourselves. Have friends with their eyes and ears open. I will confess, I quite often see things and then drop a note to a friend going, oh, I've just seen this. You wouldn't mind popping a shout out in there for me, or seeing a post going, oh, I think this is a good one for you to get involved in. We can do that offline as well to, you know, build our conversations. So do work with others. Collaborations are really important.
Love that. And just a quick one is, if you want those slides emailed to you and this recording as well, which you'll have on LinkedIn anyway, but to get the slides, just ping that QR code and then you'll make sure we will send those to you. I think that is it.
We have done it. Again, we really hope to see some of you next week in London, Wednesday the 6th. Couldn't be more excited about it. We have one more social media update to go this year. We're going to be doing it on the 5th of December. So we'll be doing our complete November roundup very early December on the 5th. I will set that up on LinkedIn. You'll probably get a notification invite to it. But otherwise, thank you to all the familiar names. Welcome to the new names. We really appreciate you spending this hour with us and listening and then getting in touch with us afterwards. We like to read the news, so we hope it helps.
Love it. Thanks so much, everyone.
See you all soon.